Pā'ia by Abraham Freeman, September 9th, 2024. I pressed the accelerator as we rounded the turn. With this, the Mazda pulled my wife and me smoothly up the steep road towards the exit of Maliko Gulch. The scenery changed drastically from the closed walls of the gulch to the rolling waves that windsurfers floated on. The triangular sails seemed to come in all colors. Orange, red, and green sails dashed back and forth across Ho'okipa Beach Park's waters. I stole glances at the surfers to the north while keeping my main attention on the road that wriggled back and forth. I never thought of the road as a highway growing up. Its 30-mile-per-hour speed limit paled in comparison to the other highways on the island. We passed Kuau Cove, also known as Mama's Fish House Beach. When my mother wanted to take us to the beach, but didn't want to drive far, she would bring my siblings and me here. Its sheltered beach and tide pools provided us with endless exploration. If you are the passenger and happen to look down at your phone, you will miss it all. As we drove past Kuau Store, the Pacific Ocean's waters were out of sight now, obscured by generations of homes. We had arrived. The marker that stood for me as the entrance to Pā'ia is the Pā'ia Montoku-ji Soto Zen Mission. The sweeping roof and cleanly defined lines of the building radiate elegance. The Pā'ia Montoku-ji Soto Zen Mission is a Japanese Buddhist temple that has stood the test of time. During the time of colonialism, Pā'ia was the birthplace of the first sugarcane fields of Fort Alexander and Baldwin. Pā'ia town began to take shape as more people from plantations were brought to Hawaii to work on them. In 1896, the first store was built. Unfortunately, in 1930, a fire broke out. Pā'ia was rebuilt, though just 16 years later, a tsunami hit Hawaii, which hit part of Pā'ia. Pā'ia was again rebuilt. The Pā'ia that I grew up with is one of laid-back people that like to sit, talk, and surf. My wife and I began the daunting task of finding parking. The main area of Pā'ia is laid out like the letter T, if it was upside down. Hana Highway forms the top section of the T, and Baldwin Avenue forms the pillar. Currently, there are only 2 parking spots in Pā'ia. One you have to pay for, and the other is free. I'll let you figure out which one is which. We opted to take our chances on street parking. We got lucky and snagged a spot next to our favorite coffee shop, Story Maui. Walking inside, I was tempted to order the drink I had ordered the last time I was on Maui, the deconstructed coffee. Imagine frozen coffee cubes in a mason jar that have the perfect amount of milk poured over them. The coffee is reconstructed as steaming espresso is poured in. As the coffee cubes melt, the drink turns into an iced coffee. My eyes dart up and down, right and left, across the menu, though I couldn't find it. The barista inquired what we would like. Before my wife could answer, I blurted out, "What happened to the deconstructed coffee?" The barista calmly informed me that it was still available, though not listed on the menu. What a relief, I thought. My wife ordered her specialty coffee. I can't remember what she got, but I remember it was delicious, because I ordered what she ordered. I know. All that worry and inquiry to not order the deconstructed coffee. As we sat drinking our specialty coffees, my eyes drifted from wall to wall. The place was covered in pieces of artwork. An individual came in carrying a 3D printer. Another person was setting up a table on a miniature stage. They laid out their jewelry on the tablecloth. 2 tables down from my wife and I, a man was sketching a design on large pieces of paper. The place seemed to be a hive of artists. My wife and I visited the coffee shop a couple of days later with my mom. I saw a plumeria flower on the ground. Feeling inspired by all the artists around me, I set the flower on the yellow table and snapped a photo. We finished our coffees and began our walk down to Baldwin Beach. As we passed by Mana Foods, I asked my wife if she wanted to pop in. She was game. A man with a gray beard was sitting on the sidewalk next to the door and asked if I would get him a sandwich. I offered him a noni fruit that I had. He thanked me, and we continued in. We perused the health food store aisles leisurely, looking at the hot food section, fresh veggies, and the cost of our favorite drinks if we were to buy them here in Hawaii. As we strolled down the sidewalk, we came to the intersection of Hana Highway and Baldwin Avenue. My wife had been looking forward to visiting this shop across the road since we had booked our airline tickets. Crossing the highway, we realized with complete disappointment that the shop, Ululani's Hawaiian Shaved Ice, was gone. The sign still hung on the storefront, though there was something amiss. Ice cream coolers wrapped in plastic stood in the large windows. 2 women stood at the doorway handing out free pints of sherbet. A new shop had moved in, Rosalani's Ice Cream. We grabbed a pint of Lolakoi sherbet, though the woman offered us 2 pints. We insisted it was too much. My wife and I stood outside the shop, consuming the sherbet with haste. The temperature was in the 80s and was melting the sherbet rapidly. We had finished our sherbet, threw the wooden spoons and container in a trash receptacle, and walked to Baldwin Beach Park. Growing up, I dropped the word park from the name and called it Baldwin Beach. If you are able to move your gaze from the storefronts and people watching and look up past the power lines, you will see poles with 7 dark green discs on them. These are the tsunami sirens that all the locals know too well. I can remember on multiple accounts of the sirens shrieking, not due to a tsunami, but for the monthly tests. As we entered the beach, a yellow lifeguard tower sat on the white sand beach. Interestingly, there was a man in swim trunks pulling a 3-foot coconut tree trunk through the sand. The guy looked like Laird Hamilton, a famous Jaws surfer. As we walked down the beach, we scouted out a spot to sit. I mentioned in previous blogs that I like to set a timer for 5 minutes so that we may sit and observe the area that we are in. We did just that. As we sat on a log, I watched the waves swell, diminish, and recede. People walked their dogs, and a couple of people sat on their beach chairs reading magazines or looking at their phones. I realized how peaceful it was, and that I was never able to appreciate it until I moved away. It's interesting, in order to appreciate something, even something so normal as waves and sun, that you have to lose them in order to enjoy them. My wife and I went for a walk with my mom in Baldwin Beach a couple of days later. This time we were lucky to spot a sea turtle resting on the beach. Farther up the beach, yellow tape blocked off areas that had signs reading turtle eggs. Green sea turtles are a protected animal, and it is suggested to give them their space at a minimum of 10 feet. My wife's stomach and mine were grumbling. We knew exactly where we wanted to eat. Pā'ia Fish Market. I had never had a bad meal at the restaurant, and we had eaten there at 3 of their locations, more than a few times. The atmosphere is laid back, which fits Pā'ia perfectly. The restaurant has a hybrid food court restaurant vibe. I say this with all due respect. There are no waiters or waitresses. Once you enter, there is usually a line to get in. You order at the counter, pay, collect your assigned number, dispense your own drink, and pick a seat. A food runner identifies your number and delivers your meal. There is no fuss, just good food. My favorite thing at the restaurant isn't on the menu. It's on the table. There is a bottle of magic sauce at every table, and if there isn't one at yours, all you have to do is ask. The sauce tastes amazing and seems to work well with every dish. It has a sweet, tangy, savory flavor. We almost bought a bottle to bring back home, though unfortunately it sells in 5-ounce bottles, which aren't approved for carry-on suitcases. I was tempted to rebottle it in 3-ounce bottles, but didn't because I knew I would be back in Hawaii to enjoy it later. Pā'ia is a place that I drove through weekly growing up and daily when I was attending college. It always seemed to be a town that I had to pass through to get on to the next destination. After having moved away, Pā'ia is no longer a waypoint for me. It is a destination.